December 7th, 1941. The harbor is still. It's a Sunday morning. Sailors are sleeping, officers are at breakfast, and the 7 battleships moored along Battleship Row sit in a neat parallel line like targets drawn on a map by someone who wanted to make the exercise easy. 183 Japanese aircraft are already airborne. They cross 230 miles of open ocean in radio silence, flying low to stay beneath radar detection. The first wave carries torpedo bombers, high-level bombers, and Zero fighters. The first bomb falls at 7:55 a.m. By 9:55 a.m., when the last Japanese aircraft turns back toward the carrier fleet, 2,403 Americans are dead. 18 ships are sunk or badly damaged. 347 aircraft are destroyed or disabled on the ground. The Pacific Fleet is broken. But what if, mounted on the deck of one of those battleships, there was something the Japanese planners had no category for, something that did not exist anywhere on Earth in 1941? What if the USS Arizona had a Phalanx CIWS on her deck the morning the attack began? The weapon. A Phalanx close-in weapon system is not designed to fight aircraft in any traditional sense. It's not a flak battery, not a guided missile. It's a radar-guided rotary cannon built around a single operational purpose: find incoming threats and destroy them before they reach the ship. The full designation is the Mark 15 Phalanx CIWS. It entered U.S. Navy service in 1980. It stands 6 feet tall and weighs approximately 6,200 pounds. The gun itself is a 20mm M61A1 Vulcan rotary cannon. Standard configuration fires 3,000 rounds per minute. The Block 1B variant fires 4,500. For this scenario, the Block 1B is the system present. Effective engagement range against aerial targets is approximately 1.5 kilometers. That engagement envelope operates fully autonomously. A human operator can be involved. The system does not require one, though. The Phalanx radar tracks both the incoming target and its own outgoing rounds simultaneously, adjusting the fire solution in real time to walk tungsten penetrators into the target. Against fast jets and sea-skimming anti-ship missiles, it achieves high single engagement kill probability. Against 1941 Japanese aircraft, aluminum and fabric construction, unguided ordnance, flying predictable formation approaches, the performance is not tested against comparable threats. It's categorically beyond what those aircraft were built to survive. The technical specifications require context. The 20mm rounds fired by the Phalanx weigh approximately 0.29 pounds each. At 4,500 rounds per minute, that represents roughly 2,175 pounds of projectile mass leaving the cannon per minute. The velocity of these rounds at muzzle is approximately 1,025 meters per second. The effective lethal radius against an unarmored aircraft is substantial. A single burst of 3 to 5 seconds can place 225 to 375 rounds in a spatial volume approximately 100 meters in diameter at engagement range. The probability that a 1941 aircraft of any type can transit such a volume unscathed approaches 0. The Phalanx was designed in the 1970s specifically to counter Soviet backfire bombers and Kingfish anti-ship missiles. Those threats required a system that could track multiple fast-moving targets and engage with minimal human involvement. The designers built automation into every aspect of the weapon system because human reaction time was considered the critical limiting variable. The radar system at the core of the Phalanx operates on principles that would have been science fiction in 1941. The system performs a complete 360-degree scan of the surrounding airspace every 2 seconds, sampling elevation and bearing data with enough precision to distinguish between individual aircraft in close formation. The fire control computer processes this radar data and performs ballistic calculations continuously, updating the firing solution 60 times per second even before engagement begins. A pilot in 1941 had no defense against such a system, having never trained for anything remotely comparable. The threat they were designed to counter did not exist in their operational environment. Neither did the defensive system. The system can engage up to 21 separate targets in the same tactical volume simultaneously, a capability that emerges not from any single engineering innovation, but from the combined effect of rapid scanning radar, high-speed computation, and a gun with sufficient rate of fire to service multiple firing solutions in rapid succession. The attack. The first wave approaches from the north. Torpedo bombers descend to strike altitude roughly 40 feet above the water surface and begin their runs toward Battleship Row. The Phalanx detects them at approximately 5 kilometers. It cannot engage at that range. It begins tracking. The radar dish rotates continuously, sampling the airspace around the Arizona multiple times per second. The fire control computer Receiving this data calculates intercept solutions in microseconds. It predicts where the aircraft will be, where its projectiles must go, and what adjustments are necessary for the constantly shifting variables of wind, aircraft acceleration, and round flight time. This calculation is performed automatically. No human calculates it, no human approves it. The machine determines that an engagement solution exists and prepares to fire. At 1.5 kilometers, the system opens fire. The leading B-5N torpedo bomber is flying at roughly 160 miles per hour. A Phalanx burst at that density does not create a clean kill against a propeller aircraft. It creates a structural failure. The B-5N comes apart before it can release its torpedo. The system's already tracking the next aircraft. The engagement rate against slow propeller aircraft at close range is faster than the system was designed to achieve against its intended threat set. Incoming Zeros and bombers are not sea-skimming anti-ship missiles. They're large, they're slow, and they're flying in coordinated formation. Against a gun firing 75 rounds per second, formation flying is the worst possible approach geometry. The instinct of the attacking pilots is to close the distance and release ordnance. Every aircraft that closes range enters the engagement envelope. By the time the Phalanx has cycled through its initial burst sequences, roughly a dozen aircraft in the first wave have been engaged. Not all are destroyed outright. Some take hits and remain airborne long enough to release ordnance off axis. Torpedo runs against the Arizona are disrupted. The B-5N that would have placed the torpedo detonating the forward magazine is not completing its run on the original approach vector. It's banking hard. It's falling. One torpedo impacts shallow mud 30 yards short of the hull. The explosion is felt on the ship. The Arizona does not sink, not in the first 20 minutes. The Phalanx drum has fired roughly 600 rounds. 950 remain. The second wave is still 45 minutes away. No reload crew is standing by. No additional ammunition exists on the ship for this system. 1,550 rounds is everything it carries into the engagement. And Fuchida's first wave still has 170 aircraft that one Phalanx on one ship cannot reach. Those aircraft are already finding every other target on Battleship Row. The Oklahoma, the West Virginia, the California. One Phalanx does not defend Pearl Harbor. It defends one ship, and even that's conditional. The outcome. The Arizona does not explode at 8:06 a.m. That single fact cascades in ways that are difficult to calculate precisely. The forward magazine detonation that killed 1,177 men in under 9 seconds does not happen. Those men are alive at 8:10. The column of smoke that rose 500 feet and marked the attack's most catastrophic single moment does not appear on schedule. The psychological effect on sailors throughout the harbor is different, not absent. Different. Japanese torpedo bombers are still hitting the Oklahoma. The Nevada is taking damage. The airfields at Wheeler and Hickam are already burning, and the aircraft parked wingtip to wingtip are not being saved by anything on the Arizona's deck. The Phalanx cannot reach any of that. What it does is demonstrate to every Japanese pilot who enters its 1.5 kilometer envelope that something new is present on the battlefield. Some pilots will not understand what they encountered until they land back on the carrier and try to explain why their formation dissolved before reaching the target. Fuchida, listening to the reports, notes the anomaly. He has no category for it. The second wave arrives and presses the attack. The Phalanx, down to its final 300 rounds by the time the second wave finds the Arizona, continues engaging. It runs dry before the attack ends. The ship takes bomb hits in the closing minutes. She's damaged. Whether she's sunk depends on where those final bombs land and whether the forward magazine remains intact. The history is no longer the same history, but 2,403 Americans dead becomes a smaller number. How much smaller depends on how you calculate the cascade from one ship not detonating in the first 10 minutes of that battle. Historians working from this altered timeline would note that the Phalanx on the Arizona fired all 1,550 rounds, engaged between 15 and 25 aircraft across both attack waves, and expended its ammunition drum completely before the attack concluded. It did not save the Pacific Fleet. It did not prevent the war. The Japanese after-action reports from returning pilots would contain something the intelligence officers reading them could not immediately classify. A description of a gun on one battleship that tracked aircraft without visible crew rotation, fired without pause between targets, and continued engaging until the aircraft were destroyed or the ship ran out of rounds. The Japanese naval planners reviewing those reports in the days that followed would not know precisely what they were reading. They would know that one ship fought differently than anything they had planned for. What the Phalanx could not do, and this deserves the same precision applied to everything else here, is change a battle by itself. One autonomous weapon system with 1,550 rounds mounted on one ship in a harbor containing dozens of ships changes one outcome for one vessel across roughly 2 hours of combat. The rest of Pearl Harbor follows the same timeline the Japanese planners designed. The aircraft losses on the ground are identical. mechanical. Damage to the other battleships proceeds on schedule. The war starts the same morning. Roosevelt addresses Congress the same afternoon. The draft notices go out the same week.